Hello and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. You know, a field like this that was soybeans, it's going to corn next year. Nitrogen is one of the concerns in our fertility program. We're going to be talking about the importance of nitrogen stabilizers today.
Well, when you start mentioning corn, I think about the roots. And we talk to farmers all the time who are concerned about lodging. They're concerned about rootworms. They're concerned about just getting as good a yield as they can possibly get. It starts with the roots. So today we want to discuss how to improve root growth in corn.
And speaking about roots, that's always one of the big concerns when you're thinking about our weed of the week. We'll show you how to control this tough weed later in the show, but first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
If you haven't yet had a chance to catch the Ag PhD radio show, we certainly invite you to do so. It's on Sirius XM channel 80, that's the rural radio channel. Ag PhD radio airs at 2 p.m. Central each weekday, and it's Darren and me with a live call-in radio show. So you can call us and ask questions. You can email us. We'll answer those questions for you. We have a number of different guests on there. We have a pest of the day. We have a lot of fun. Well, anyway, we had a caller just the other day who was a truck driver. He wasn't actually a farmer, and he asked us this question. He said, what's the difference between banding and broadcasting fertilizer, and why do some farmers do one and some do the other?
Well, that's a great question. In fact, this field, we're going to do a little bit of both out in the field. We're spreading lime across the entire field. That will be broadcast. We'll be putting some P&K out in a strip till application. That will be banded. We'll probably broadcast nitrogen out here when we put pre-emerge herbicides out.
Actually, this year we probably won't band hardly any P&K. We'll do some with the planter, but we'll do manure as a broadcast for the majority of the P&K needs going into next year. But anyway, the point is some farmers will do both, like us. Every year we do some broadcasting, some banding. The reason why we want to do broadcasting, it's simple and easy and fast. The reason why we want to do banding is it's a much more efficient way to use the fertilizer. We can actually get by with less.
Well, and it depends on what you're doing too. When we think about broadcasting fertilizer, for us, nitrogen's one that, you know, it doesn't make that much difference whether you broadcast it or band it because it moves around in the soil a little bit. So it will move with soil water. So if you spread it in a band, it'll spread out a little bit. The roots will find that. It'll be taken in with water. But when you're looking at things like potassium and phosphorus, they pretty much stay where they're put. And so by putting them in a band, it's a little bit different than doing it in a broadcast where the plant roots will have to grow to that band. But by leaving it in the band, there are some benefits.
Well, with this banding, just so we're clear on this, all it is a farmer is putting a concentrated strip of fertility either above ground or most likely below ground. It can be done at planting time. It can be done in the fall with a different machine. It can be done in the spring with a different machine. There are a lot of ways to do the banding, but it's putting all the fertilizer in a strip as opposed to just randomly throwing it out there in the field and spreading it all across the field, across every acre. The number one reason why it's more efficient to have this fertility in that band is because of the way roots grow. With roots, they don't just know where fertilizer is and say, oh, I know there's fertilizer over there, and send a whole bunch of roots over there and get it. What they do is they just start randomly growing in soil, typically taking the path of least resistance. And once they find areas where there's a lot of fertility, then they put out a bunch more roots in that area. We've done tests of this in the lab and behind plexiglass and everything. It's really interesting. When you put a zone of fertilizer there, you'll have roots that'll just be growing all over the place. And all of a sudden, when they get to that area where there's a lot of fertilizer, the plant must sense that and know, hey, there's a great fertility zone here. I got to send a bunch more roots right in this area now that I found it to get that fertilizer. So because of that, plants aren't just randomly hunting all over the soil. If a farmer puts his band of fertilizer right below where the seed is planted, for example, or even right with the seed, now those roots can find that. They put a whole bunch more roots out once they do find that fertilizer, and there's a lot more uptake this year as opposed to in broadcasting. It might be 2 or 3 or 4 years later when some of that fertilizer gets found by plant roots.
Well, that's part of this, is that farmers are adopting more banding practices because with RTK NPK sub-inch accurate GPS guidance, we can put fertility out right now in the fall, and then we can plant directly over the top of it next spring. Now we can be perfectly right over that fertility, which really increases our efficiency. The other big benefit of banding is that in the soil, there are other nutrients out there that can tie up some of this fertilizer. For example, if you have lots of free calcium in your soil, it can tie up phosphorus. However, if you're going to band it, now you've got a concentrated band of phosphorus, and it's really tough for calcium to tie all of that up or tie a good percentage of it up. So just right there, you've got more efficiency, more available phosphorus with the same amount of pounds you would have put out in a broadcast.
By tie-up, what Darren's talking about here is calcium together with phosphate. If those combine, that can form calcium phosphate, and that is insoluble in water, and plants can't absorb it. So even though a farmer's got phosphorus sitting there, the root can't absorb it. It can't bring it in. That's obviously a problem. Well, once again, with this broadcasting versus banding, with mobile nutrients in the soil, things like nitrogen, sulfur, boron, really not a big deal. A farmer can broadcast, those nutrients will move in the soil, the roots will find them, or the fertilizer will find the roots sometimes because of the movement in soil, so it's not a big deal there. But with immobile nutrients, things like zinc, phosphorus, potassium, those don't move well in soil. A farmer is way ahead to band those so you can get better uptake right away and worry about less tie-up later on. It's also more efficient then. If you're going to be using less fertilizer, it's safer for the environment. Obviously, we're using less fertilizer. We don't have to worry about as much loss then if we're putting fewer nutrients out in the field.
Well, one other thing that we're concerned about out in fields is weed control. Can you identify this week's weed of the week?
What's next in weed control technology? Roundup Ready 2 Extend soybeans, an advanced soybean product with tolerance to dicamba and glyphosate. Roundup Ready 2 Extend soybeans. Extend your control.
Whether you're feeding cattle, milking cows, or baling hay, the work on your farm is never done, which is why you need equipment that works as hard as you do. Get the efficiency and versatility you need with Case IH. From farm-all compact and utility tractors to balers and mowers, all Case IH equipment is designed with one thing in mind: getting the job done. To learn more, visit caseih.com/livestock.
Looking to maximize yield? QuickRoots is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. QuickRoots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more. QuickRoots is applied to the seeds so the live microorganisms go right to work, enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients, including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your local dealer and get your QuickRoots today.
Capello corn headers are designed for producers who expect more. Expect more grain in your bin. Expect an industry-leading 2-year manufacturer's warranty. Expect Capello-designed chopping and folding options that save you time and money. And whether red, green, or yellow, expect row size options that fit your operation because all producers deserve the best. Expect Capello. It's ahead above the rest.
You expect a lot from this seed. And as it grows through each stage of development, Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers is there, feeding your crop exactly what it needs when it needs it. So no matter how you fertilize, no matter when, AgroLiquid efficiently brings all the nutrients your crop needs for a great harvest. From 1 kernel in the ground to 600 on the ear. For better yields and better quality, Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers.
A proven herbicide for decades, dicamba can provide burn-down residual control of tough and resistant weeds for up to 14 days. That's another reason why farmers will use dicamba for years to come. Brought to you by Roundup Ready Plus Weed Management Solutions.
One of the biggest questions we get at Ag PhD is, how do I protect my nitrogen so I don't have a lot of loss and I get the best uptake possible of that nitrogen by my next crop?
That's easy. Use a nitrogen stabilizer.
Well, it's not easy. That's why we wanted to talk about it a little bit today, because it does cost money. It does require some application or more expense to have somebody apply it for you.
It's no big deal, Brian. You know, the big thing is just convincing yourself that it's worth the investment. And when we think about nitrogen stabilizers, they've been out for a long time. There have been products like N-Serve that have been available for years and years, but then there are some newer products too that are out there on the market, and you may be wondering, all right, well, we've got NutriSphere N. How does that compare to something like N-Serve or Instinct or Agritain? I mean, there's all these different products out there, and there seems to be a fit for some of them more than others.
Yep. So there are three main things that we're talking about here with this nitrogen stabilization. All we're trying to do is prevent loss out there, but there are different types of losses in the field. Number one, we're worried about denitrification. When our nitrogen gets in water, then it can end up going up in the air. Number two, we're talking about just loss on top of the field, so it's going into the atmosphere immediately. And number three, we're worried about leaching, having it go down deep into the ground. So when we compare these different products, that I think is where we need to start. Which ones will protect against each particular type of loss?
All right, when you think about volatility, a lot of nitrogen that gets put out, as we were talking in the banding versus broadcasting discussion in Farm Basics, well, a lot of that nitrogen gets broadcast, gets laid on top of the ground. Now, some farmers intend to get back as quick as they can and do some incorporation. Other times they say, you know, I'm gonna lay it out there and I don't want to incorporate it. I'm gonna just hope that there's gonna be some rainfall that comes along and that washes it in. Now, if you're one of those guys, volatilization is very important for you because you're leaving it on top of the ground. Once you've sprayed that out there or spread it out there, you don't have any more control. Now, it could be sunny and windy for the next couple of weeks, and that rain that was in the forecast never happens. All of a sudden, your nitrogen is out there unprotected. This is where you can see some big time loss. Now, if it's just for a day or two, it's probably no big deal. That's fine. If you get it worked in within a couple of days or you get a rainfall within a couple of days, for the most part, you aren't gonna have big losses. But if it gets any further than that, you could easily lose half your nitrogen or potentially even more.
So when it comes to this volatility issue and nitrogen stabilizers, here's what we're looking at. Agritain is a very good option, as is NutriSphere N or More Than Manure. So let's talk about those. NutriSphere cannot be used on really anything other than the dry and liquid forms of nitrogen. With the More Than Manure, that can be used with manure. So neither one of those can go with anhydrous. Now the Agritain, you can find versions for dry, for liquid, but the thing with Agritain is it's only going to help you on that volatility issue, whereas the NutriSphere N and the More Than Manure are going to also help you with the denitrification loss and the leaching loss. So each one of these products is a little bit different and their uses are a little different.
For example, when we talk about Agritain, if you're going to be incorporating your nitrogen, there's no point putting Agritain on at all. It's going to help with volatilization. Well, if you're already putting that nitrogen underneath the surface of the soil, you just don't need it. Now, with the other forms of nitrogen stabilizers, as Brian talked about, whether you're going to incorporate them or leave them on the top, there can be a benefit with those products. So they do work slightly different.
Okay, but Instinct and N-Serve, they're really not going to help you much with that volatilization issue. They are more for the denitrification and for the leaching. Instinct is the product that would be used for manure, for dry and liquid forms of nitrogen. The N-Serve is for anhydrous. So that's where the key differences are.
All right, so you're thinking, maybe I will consider using a nitrogen stabilizer, and maybe if I can protect that N, I can just put all kinds of nitrogen out on my light soils.
No, what it still comes back to is what's your cation exchange capacity? If you're not getting that test in your soil test, you have to get that. You're a farmer and that's one of the most important things you need to know about your soil. How much will it hold of everything? Of water, of fertilizer, of chemical. Cation exchange capacity is what tells you that. For nitrogen, just take your cation exchange capacity number, multiply it times 10, and it will tell you roughly how much nitrogen your soil can hold at any one time. So let's say you've got a 15 cation exchange capacity number, times 10 is 150. If you've already got 30 pounds in the soil, that means you can apply 120 pretty safely without a lot of risk. If you're going to put a nitrogen stabilizer on with it, could you maybe bump that a little bit? Probably just a little bit, but you can't get too carried away. In other words, if you say, well, I'm going for 250 bushel corn, it was continuous corn, I'm going to put 300 pounds of nitrogen out there, my soil will only hold 150, but I'm going to put a nitrogen stabilizer with it. No, that's not going to work, because think about when that nitrogen is going to get used up. Does your tiny little corn plant next spring, is that going to use 150 pounds of nitrogen? No way. So you got to use your head on these things and be smart. You're still going to have to split apply most likely if you've got lighter soils, but the main thing is know what your cation exchange capacity number is. You can maybe bump it just a little bit because of the nitrogen stabilizer, but more than anything, it's just helping protect you, helping protect that loss, because don't forget, while loss is harmful to the environment, it's also harmful to your bottom line. The last thing you want to do is have your expensive nitrogen either going up in the air or leaching down through the soil and your crop doesn't get to use it.
Again, to your point, for from an environmental standpoint, we have to be really cautious on the farm and do things right. We don't want to have any leaching or loss out there if we can help it, because where is it going to end up? It's going to end up in the water somewhere, whether it's the groundwater or a river or stream or something like that. And we just don't want to see those things happen, because it has happened in other countries and other parts of the world. And all
even
of a sudden,
in our country, and unfortunately people don't understand, a little bit of nitrate's not hurting anybody. They just see, hey, there's a little bit of nitrate in our water.
And they blame
must
farmers.
be doing a bad job.
Yeah, and they blame farmers when in all actuality, in most cases when there is some nitrate in the water, it's not coming from the farms, it's coming from something industrial, or it's coming from a city. And I'm not trying to put anybody else down. I'm just saying that from a farmer standpoint, this is their bottom line.
Well, having enough nitrogen for your crop is a very important thing if you want high yields, but so is having great weed control. Can you identify this week's Weed of the Week?
Wake up, breakfast is served. Your roots crave P. Most of your applied P gets tied up in the soil, a natural phenomenon known as phosphorus fixation. Fix the problem with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Avail makes more P available to your roots, here, here, and here. Increasing P availability can lead to increased P uptake in the plant. That's more P, and more P. More phosphorus for your crop can mean more results in your bin. An average of 9.6 bushels per acre of corn. Breakfast is served. Supercharge your P with Avail.
At Titan Machinery and Case IH, we offer better solutions for all your production needs. It's more than our job, it's who we are. We are parts. We are service. We are training. And most importantly, we are here for you. In any season, for every reason, we've got you covered. Case IH and Titan Machinery, better solutions.
Upgrade your trailer to electric with the Rolltech electric system from AgriCover. Strong, flexible pivot arms and motor mount rotate and telescope, allowing the roll tube to rise and flex over heaped loads. The positive automatic lock is impossible to back off to control the flow of grain. This integrated system uses one wireless remote to operate up to 10 tarps and hoppers, keeping your driver out of the dust, rain, and harm's way. See the Rolltech system in action at an AgriCover dealer near you.
For years, FarmLogic has been the easiest and most convenient way to keep up with your farming operations. Well, it just got better. Introducing FarmPad for your phone. You always have your phone with you, so entering records as they happen is as easy as a touch of a button. Chemical database, GPS, service records, and more. When you do it on the farm, save it on your phone and it's backed up forever. Call or visit farmlogic.com for a free trial and find out why FarmLogic is the best decision tool for the farm.
Capello corn headers are designed for producers who expect more. Expect more grain in your bin. Expect an industry-leading 2-year manufacturer's warranty. Expect Capello design chopping and folding options that save you time and money. And whether red, green, or yellow, expect row size options that fit your operation, because all producers deserve the best. Expect Capello. It's a head above the rest.
When we look at cornfields across the country, everybody's looking above ground, but I think below ground tells even more of a story. We're going to talk about improving corn root growth, and I just want to start out by saying this, Brian. If your corn fell over this year, don't blame the seed corn company. Now, there are some differences, variety to variety, in terms of root growth, stalk strength, all those things. But more times than not, it's a problem that's happening below ground in your soils rather than something wrong with the hybrid.
Okay, so let's look at all the possible things it could be. So let's say you had disease there. What else can you do?
Well, you can certainly use seed treatment. You can certainly put more fungicide right in the furrow.
Exactly.
We've had a really good response on our farm using some headline in furrow, and there are other products that could be used too.
If it's rootworm problem, then what?
Well, I had a rootworm problem last year on one of my fields, and what I did is instead of...
Wait, did you have BT corn?
I had a single trait rootworm product, and I used some insecticide.
How
this
much?
year, I used a full rate of insecticide,
yeah,
and I used Smart Stacks corn. So now I had multiple traits and insecticide, and I had 0 issues, and I virtually saw 0 corn rootworm beetles.
Okay, let's talk about compaction for just a second. If you've got compaction, we're big believers in zone building, going 20 inches down with a straight shank, narrow point. That's a good idea. Also on our farm, we do some strip till stuff, and when we do that, we're going down 10 inches with a shank. You might not have given this a lot of thought, but we're busting up any compaction all the way down to 10 inches. That's a nice start.
Well, I think the big thing, Brian, is we're out in the fall. Bring a shovel with you, bring a tile spade along, and everywhere you go when you're walking through fields, just put the shovel in the ground and stand on it and just see if it goes down. If it goes down with no problem, hey, we don't have a big compaction issue in that spot. Now go on your wheel tracks, see what the difference is. Go on the headlands, see what the difference is. You've got some problem areas out in your field after harvest where the grain cart drove, where the truck sat, where you turned around multiple times during the year. Deal with those issues in those spots. If you've got no compaction out in your fields, you should have no restriction on where your roots
when you
grow.
mentioned the tile thing, drainage is a huge issue. Remember that if your water table is too high, even just early in the spring, you have limited your root growth. You absolutely are not going to have the deep roots you should to stabilize your plant. You've got to fix that. And then the biggest issue that we haven't even talked about yet is fertility. You have to have ample fertility and a balance of fertility. Don't forget about things like micronutrients and sulfur that you'd only need to spend a few bucks an acre on. That could be your limiting factor. Otherwise, a lot of stalk problem, a lot of root problem comes back to lack of potassium that's available in your soil, not just in the form of rock, but that's available in your soil. If you're having these issues, address all these things that we talked about and make sure you're looking to figure it out. Don't just say, well, it's the seed problem. I'll just do the same thing I did next year and it'll probably be better. It's not gonna get better unless you make some changes.
Well, a good place to start on the fertility side is downloading the free Ag PhD fertilizer removal app. You can find that for your smartphone or for your iPad. Start there. See what kind of crop you raise, see what nutrients it takes to do so. Chances are when you look at what the grain and the stover needs, you're probably not getting enough fertilizer out there available. The other thing is, take a look at some of the biological products in the market. We've been using Quick Roots and some other biologicals on our farm and seeing a really nice response in terms of better root growth, more nutrient uptake, and better yields.
The other big thing if you want better yields is having great weed control. We'll tell you how to stop our weed of the week coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Farming always looks forward. Introducing the Enlist Weed Control System, an advanced herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate for exceptional control of tough weeds. The next chapter begins.
Our weed of the week is Bur Cucumber.
Well, Bur Cucumber is one of the 10 toughest weeds to kill in crop, and part of the reason is it comes up later, it's a vine, so it's really tough to get good coverage on, and it's tough for residuals to still be hanging on long enough to control it season long. So when we think about Bur Cucumber, I just think about the plant itself. First of all, it is a vine. The leaves are heart-shaped with 5 lobes and they're kind of hairy. So it's fairly easy to identify. Once you've seen it, you know, the seed has some spikes on the side and it looks kind of like a cucumber. I don't think anybody will have too tough a time identifying the weed. It's just getting it under control. Now in corn, I really like starting out with either Balanced Flex or one of the products that contains it, or Verdict. Those two seem to do the best job early. Then post-emerge, I like Status. In wheat, we start out with a high rate of sharpen, so we use at least a couple ounces of sharpen. Then in crop, I like Husky plus Addition Broad Spec or Addition Tank Mix. We can do a pretty nice job there. Then in soybeans, here's where it gets to be a little bit of a challenge. I like STS tolerant Roundup Ready soybeans,
where are you
Brian.
going to find those STS
And the reason why is I can use Roundup in crop, plus I can use some Synchrony or some straight Classic if my soil pH allows.
Well, that's what I was going to say. In the northern part of the country, you can't use a high rate of Classic, so it's not going to help you all that much. But having the other portion of it in there, the old Pinnacle, that's nice.
All right, well, otherwise you've got products like Cadet and Cobra that are okay helpers, but you really need the Roundup or Liberty in that situation to do a nice job. Unfortunately, Roundup and Liberty, well, and Cadet and Cobra for that matter, have no residual. So again, we're right back in the same boat of needing to spray multiple times to try and control this weed.
That's it for our Weed of the Week, Bur Cucumber. But stick around, Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
What are farmers doing to feed the planet? They're using Quadtrek technology, soil management, and planting systems from Case IH to foster a better growing environment that maximizes yield potential. Visit caseih.com to be ready.
Fertilizer application is one of the late fall jobs for many farms across the country. If you'd like to get more bang for your buck, today's Iron Talk will give you some food for thought. Fall fertilization is great because you give dry fertilizer products like MAP and DAP more time to break down. It's also nice to get one job out of the way, so in the spring you have less things in your way before planting. It's my contention that many farm operations are wasting money on fertilizer right now, and that means there's an opportunity to get a better return on your fertilizer investment dollar. Here are a few ideas. First of all, fall urea is normally a bad idea. I understand you want to get things done now, but urea is not the best form of nitrogen to use, and you've got months before you'll plant the corn or spring wheat and the possibility of heavy snow or rain between now and then. Anhydrous or ammonium sulfate would be better options if you just have to do it now. Otherwise, wait until spring to save yourself the 10, 20, maybe even 60% of the product you'll lose by putting it out now. Secondly, banding is much more efficient. Especially if you have high calcium and high pH soils, nutrient tie-up is a real thing. For example, when calcium ties up phosphorus, it becomes insoluble in water and may never come available for a future crop. By banding, you keep the nutrients concentrated so they naturally resist tie-up. Also, you can protect nutrients like phosphorus by using a veil or a protected phosphorus source like ProGerminator. Third, deep placement is much better than shallow incorporation or leaving nutrients on the soil surface. We prefer to use a knife to put our P&K down 10 inches deep where they're safe and available for our crop all throughout the growing season. Protecting nutrients from runoff and nutrient stratification in the top few inches of soil is good for crop production, but also good for our whole industry when it comes to preserving water quality. Fall fertilization is always going to happen, and it's not a bad thing. Just pick the right products, use the proper equipment, and be efficient and environmentally safe. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
For lower cost, higher production, see your Mandaco Agri-Dealer. Ask about the best production-built land roller on the market. Mandaco, simple design for easy transport to easy use. 12 to 85-foot widths, heavy-duty 4x8 3/8-inch tube frame, and now available with a steerable wing wheel. Mandaco land rollers, improved soil-to-seed contact, faster, more uniform germination, less moisture loss, eliminate downtime due to rocks. See your Mandaco Agri-Dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call.
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more. Quick Roots is applied to the seed so the live microorganisms go right to work, enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients, including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your local dealer and get your Quick Roots today.
Whether you're feeding cattle, milking cows, or baling hay, the work on your farm is never done. Which is why you need equipment that works as hard as you do. Get the efficiency and versatility you need with Case IH. From farm-all compact and utility tractors to balers and mowers, all Case IH equipment is designed with one thing in mind: getting the job done. To learn more, visit caseih.com/livestock.
If you watch Ag PhD TV, you'll love the new Ag PhD radio show each weekday on Rural Radio Sirius XM Channel 80. This is Darren Hefty. On the new Ag PhD radio program, we'll take live callers and provide the agronomic information and brotherly banter you've come to expect from Ag PhD. We'll feature a Back 40 segment where we talk to farmers and agronomists around the country to share what's going on with crop production. And it wouldn't be Ag PhD without addressing a pest of the day. Tune in to the Ag PhD radio show each weekday at 2 p.m. Central on Rural Radio Sirius XM Channel 80.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but be sure to join us again next time for another Iron Talk, Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, and a whole lot more. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
American ethanol is made primarily from corn. Did you realize that the type of corn used for ethanol and livestock feed is much different than the sweet corn on your dinner table? For more information, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.